and welcome to Soul GPS, where we learn to take our life back in our hands after narcissistic abuse. Today I wanted to talk to you about the subject of how to recognize the steps and the signs that you're being spiritually abused. This pertains to both organized cults as well as a narcissist that has a spiritual inclination. So here are the 10 signs through which you can recognize that things are going in the wrong direction. Step number 1 is you feel uncomfortable. This is a feeling, most likely, in your body that when you are in the presence of the person who's serving you, let's say, a teaching, or who's trying to, quote-unquote, enlighten you about something, while their words might sound great, you sense that there's something really off. There's some kind of ulterior motive. And you can't put your finger quite on it because everything they say sounds great. I think this is really important to really think about, especially as we are in this reality these days where we have access to so many tools with respect to spiritual development. And people, and especially empathic people, who have the desire to grow, who have the desire to reach towards higher realms of their consciousness, open their heart, work on themselves, are especially vulnerable when it comes to putting themselves out there, which often involves stepping into the world that is a mixed bag of personalities. And I have found through my own experience, many experiences in fact, one of which inspired this video, let me just say, because I went through the whole 10-step process, that it made me realize that this is really pervasive. It's happening in the yoga community, it's happening in the empowerment groups community, it is happening in all sorts of Eastern spiritual gatherings. I'm not saying that it happens everywhere and that you have to be really, not even pursue a path for yourself, just to be on guard and to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, because there is just so much bullshit out there. And one more thing I want to say before I go further is the fact that your spiritual development is a very individual path. It is your path. And I believe that whether it's organized religion, whether it is some form of a group that aims to follow a certain path, it is a model for you to follow if that's what resonates with you. So I'm not saying that all the teachings out there, are bad or good or this or that. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that you have to be very careful about who's delivering the message and what is the underlying message of the delivery. Because if the underlying message is, you need me, the person, whoever stands in between you and the quote-unquote divine, right? If you need me in order to take you there, then there's something wrong with the teaching, because people who do have knowledge, who really have reached higher states of consciousness, in my opinion, one way you can recognize them is they have a very empowering attitude towards the student. So yes, when I speak about being uncomfortable, I don't mean the discomfort where you are actually breaking through internal barriers of your own self-growth, because that does have to occur if you want to go deeper and ascend into higher levels of your own spiritual development. That is a given. We have to shed some weight. We have to shed some of our old belief systems that have kept us stuck. This is not what I'm talking about. You'll know when you're working through that. What I'm saying is that if the person is making themselves indispensable in the process, So then you begin to rely upon what they're doing, what they're saying, and their presence in order to have the experience. I hope that this really clarified my intent in making this video. So I'm going to go forward now and go into the next step. So step number 2 is you feel confused. You feel confused. And the kind of confusion I mean here is, again, not the kind of confusion when you have new information that makes sense, that is clashing with your old paradigm. And I don't also mean that you're learning something new and maybe you haven't yet fully gauged, the concept that you're being presented with. That's not the kind of confusion I mean. The kind of confusion I mean is if the person, whether it is the narcissist or whether it is a guru of some form, or a teacher or a priest, are talking to you in a way that serves you a bunch of double entendres, that gives you the so-called word salad, where it's a lot like a trance. So you're being told things that you're kind of following, but it kind of doesn't make sense. And then there's a lot of opposing concepts. And what happens is there's a bit of a cognitive dissonance that begins to set in. And you're sensing, your body is picking up on the fact that what that person is talking about, it's almost as if they're purposely trying to make you confused in order to then slip messages into that foggy, tranced out state that you'd be in, so that they can convince you that you need them. That's generally the case. It's that you need the path, you need the teaching, you need the structure, you need them in order to gain anything in your life. The truth is you don't need any of that in order to have a true relationship with the divine. It is between you and the universe. It's between you and God. It's between you and whatever faith you want to pursue. So they're there just to assist you and to help you, to bolster you, to help you on your path, not to be the one that you need in order to speak with your higher self or with the higher dimensions. So the confusion is the kind of confusion where you're starting to feel yourself almost like you're kind of stupid. You're like, oh, I'm not following this. Like everybody else seems to be getting it, but I'm not getting it. If it doesn't make sense to you, you either need to ask clarifying questions or pause and step back and perhaps take another look that, like really discern, really dissect what it is that's being communicated, because spirituality is a very personal, somewhat amorphous realm, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't make sense. It should be very clear, right? Like that this is going to allow you to do this, right? Like meditation, and here are the steps to meditation. Here's what you do. You're counting your breaths. You're focusing on going within, right? Or prayer, different forms of prayer, or chanting, or doing self-forgiveness work, any of those things. This is pretty crystal clear. But when it gets into kind of like murky territory, just watch out. Because I have fallen for the trap so many times, way too many times. And it led me to what I'm going to tell you next, which is step number 3. And the step number 3 is self-doubt. So you begin to doubt, like, your beliefs, your sense of self, your idea about, your paradigm about the universe. Again, a little bit of exposure to new information and perhaps readjustment of your belief system. That's healthy, that's good, that's opening. You're opening your mind to new information. But when you begin to all out doubt yourself, where you're feeling, it's that you're getting that feeling of confusion, you're getting that feeling of discomfort, but you kind of like, you shove it to the side. You're like, no, I'm not getting confused. No, I'm not. This is something I need to work through, right? You look at it as an obstacle. Again, be really careful, because oftentimes what the narcissist or the teacher or the narcissistic teacher will say and do is that, this is the barrier through which you need to break. Which takes us to step number 4. And step number 4 is you accept a dogma or a kind of teaching without fully understanding it, without fully grasping it. So this is where we nod and smile, even though it doesn't quite make sense. So it's kind of like at this point, we're beginning to lie to ourselves. We know it is not really resonating. We know there are faults, there are holes. We can't quite put our finger on it because, sorry about the motorcycle. We can't quite put our finger on it, but because oftentimes these teachers are quite intelligent and they have gathered a plethora of research and information, so they kind of know how to patch up the holes with different ideas. So your brain is a little, it's almost like it's a little bit too slow to catch on because you do not have the library of information that they do. But what you do have is you have that internal sense, that feeling that something is off. So when you're starting to lie to yourself in order to appease another, or in order to not to look quote unquote stupid, again, pause back, because it might not be at all that you are lacking in intelligence. It may very well be that they're purposely putting holes in your own thinking and putting landmines in your own thinking so that you accept somebody else's dogma as your own. Step number 5 is, this is where we're crossing a threshold where you begin to agree with what it is that they're telling you, what it is that they're feeding you. Again, this is a form of kind of a self-betrayal. At this point where we went from lying to ourselves that something's off to all out leaving ourselves behind and saying, you know, yeah, I agree. Because, and oftentimes what happens, this is what happened to me. What happened to me is that I was in this group and I felt that if I don't agree, I'm not going to belong. So it was my old wound of feeling isolated, of feeling like I didn't know my place in the world. And I wanted to connect. I really wanted to connect. And I like the moments of connection and I like the sense of community. But I started to agree to things that normally I wouldn't agree, and doing things that normally I probably wouldn't do. And it was all for the sake of, okay, well, let's try something different. Let's have an adventure, right? But what that did is it started to break my internal boundaries, which were, I wouldn't say, very solid to begin with. So agreeing to something that makes no sense, agreeing to something that doesn't sit right with you, something you don't quite understand, is a big red flag. So watch out for this. Number 6 is, again, we're breaking yet another threshold. And this is the point at which our thinking begins to shift. So for me, what I started to notice is that the information I was being exposed to by the quote unquote guru, narcissist, person that was there, I thought, to serve me answers. And it was almost like they're dangling this carrot that I'm going to reach this state. Like I want this state so much, and I've had tastes of it through the sense of love and community and connection. And I was looking to have that on a permanent basis. So that was the bait. It's very similar to what the narcissist does in a relationship, where they expose you to all this tantalizing love bombing stage. They give you all this attention. They give you all of this love, quote unquote love, not real love, right? So you begin to feel so good, like you belong, like you found that kindred spirit. And then that starts to, you're starting to get less and less of that. So you want it back, So that dynamic is being used against you. So you keep putting in the work. You keep, it's almost like you need to prove to the person that's holding the keys to what you want that you're worthy and that you deserve it, right? So they keep jumping through hoops. Usually those hoops you're jumping through is doing the bidding of the narcissist, which is to, give them all forms of supply, whether it is your attention, your admiration, whether it is sex, whether it is doing work for them, whether it is cleaning the temple, whatever it is. And yes, some form, if you are following, if you're going to say like an ashram, or part of belonging to the community is being engaged in, certain tasks, community tasks. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the fact that it's more than it's been agreed to. You're feeling like you're being sucked dry, like your resources are being depleted. There is a sense of imbalance. So your thinking shifts and you begin to notice that your thoughts that you used to be familiar with when you were doing certain tasks, right? Your own internal dialogue is being replaced by the thoughts of the teacher, of the guru, of the narcissist. So this is the point at which it reaches that threshold of your program, your old program, your natural program being overwritten by the thoughts and the programs by someone else. And this is often accompanied by a sense of cognitive dissonance in which your old paradigm and the new paradigm are clashing. Now, again, I'm not talking about learning something new where your mind opens. I'm talking about a really deep undermining sense of the way I used to think is just not working anymore. Right? And one way you can recognize that you have entered this territory is when you step outside the house of the narcissist or the environment of the narcissist, or when you step outside the temple, the classroom, and you look around and the world seems kind of foreign and distant. You don't feel like you're relating to it anymore. It's almost as if it exists behind the glass. So that means you're being really tranced and pulled into a different reality. So pay attention to this. Step number 7 usually comes very soon. After this, it's a sense of imploding from within. So here's when the cognitive dissonance tension, the clashing between the two paradigms, reaches a degree of it's just too much to continue to hold on to the two opposing views, right? Where it's like you're trying to fight inside of your mind that this new thing you're learning is making sense. Like you want this because it is promising you that thing, whatever it is that you're after, right? But at the same time, it is hurting you. At the same time, you feel like your soul is being splintered. This is exactly the narcissist or the narcissistic guru's goal, is to basically eviscerate your sense of self that you had before, your balance, your grounding, your rooting, to quote unquote kill your ego, right? In order to then inject you with their own program, inject you with their own belief system. If you are in a group that surrounds you with other people, they often will come around, they will swarm around you at this point and tell you, yes, this is it. You are just about to reach God. You're just a step up from enlightenment now. Now you're feeling all this pain, that Jesus Christ felt. You're feeling all this pain that all the other enlightened beings have gone through. In reality, what is happening is you're feeling the pain of your soul breaking. So at this point, you're wide open and at your most vulnerable to accept the other person's teaching as the higher truth. Step number 9 is you are beginning to see, falsely so, this breakdown that you have just gone through as a breakthrough. The reality is that this is the point at which your old world has been blown into smithereens. This is very similar to what happens in a relationship with a narcissist. This is also similar to what happens in military training, where young soldiers are being basically inundated with the messages that they're worthless, that all of what they've held before, right? Their opinions, their strengths, anything that gave them a sense of inner directive has to be annihilated so that they can take orders and act on them right away. It's the same form of brainwashing that the narcissists use, is the same form of brainwashing, same dynamic that the guru uses. So once there's nothing left, once you are completely vulnerable and left open, you are now convinced that if all the other steps were successful and they were able to smash all of your boundaries, Now you're convinced you're having a breakthrough, that this is it, that you now are ripe for enlightenment, which of course never comes. Which of course that moment never comes, because it was a false premise to begin with. It was a false promise to begin with. So now you're becoming, now you have been completely indoctrinated, and you have become sort of like the limb, the extra limb of the narc or the guru, who is now going to be using you in order for you to do things for them. So you have become the perfect source of supply. And oftentimes, if it happens in a group, there are other people that are, you know, similarly brainwashed, that are acting the same way, which is like these little automatons who are just doing and saying and sound just like the guru, again, because they feel like they are they're standing on the threshold of something magnanimous, or maybe that they have already embodied it and that this is it and they're living in paradise. Which of course is absolutely false, and it leads to point number 10, which is you basically welcomed to the group, welcome to the family. You feel like, you know, you have that sense of belonging, but there is a big caveat, and the caveat is that the only way that you can stay connected with this new group or stay connected with your narcissist is if you do as they say. If you continue to act the way they want you to act. The moment your old sense of self, your healthy sense of self, begins to sprout back up and you begin to voice your preferences, watch out. Because the narcissist doesn't like it. The guru doesn't like it. The narcissistic guru doesn't like it. Again, this video is not to put down all forms of teachings, you know, organized teachings that are out there, because those can be really helpful. But I think one way to really know and one way to discern whether you're stepping into something that is going to be truly valuable to you versus not is you have a sense that this teaching is empowering, that it's not trying to destroy who you were before in order to overlay a new program. It is to help you to find your own way towards whatever it is that you're looking for. So I think that that's a big difference. So I hope that this video helped you. Perhaps you have been through this experience yourself, perhaps with a larger group. I hope that you were able to see many parallels here with respect to, you know, how others use these techniques and these tactics, not just in a relationship, because let's be honest, we're living in a world that has been inundated with this virus, whatever this thing is, and it's happening everywhere. It's even happening to us the moment we turn on the television. That's a form of brainwashing. It's something to be really wary of, as well as, you know, for all of us seeking to grow, seeking higher levels of consciousness, seeking to create a better life for ourselves. We need to remember that we are, in a sense, putting ourselves in a vulnerable position. So we need to be extra discerning when it comes to picking the path that we think may be right for us. And as I always say, when you go within, when you have a sense of connection with yourself, your inner compass will speak to you, and it will guide you, and it will tell you whether something is healthy for you versus whether something isn't healthy for you. So keep that in mind. Stay connected to your body, stay connected to yourself, and let your inner compass guide you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.